Okay, let's unpack this. We are deep into, well, maybe the most consequential journey in Middle-earth, and the story, it's just taken this absolutely brutal turn.
Uh-huh.
We've reached a point where the landscape, it's not just a challenge anymore, is it? It feels like it's become this, I don't know, character in itself, actively trying to swallow them whole.
Yeah.
So we're diving into J.R.R. Tolkien's chapter, The Passage of the Marshes.
And it's such a critical pivot point. You can really feel the shift, even in just the way it's written, the structure of it. We're
Definitely.
leaving behind all that, structured heroism of Rohan, the big battles, the horses, the banners. It's all gone.
Right.
And our sources for this deep dive, Tolkien's own letters about World War I, are huge here, obviously, but also academic work on war mythology, detailed analyses of the Two Towers structure. They all really hammer this home. The
Yeah.
whole emotional landscape, the spiritual geography, it just shifts drastically.
How would you describe it?
Grim, stagnant, utterly suffocating. This is that terrain, that nightmare stretch between the sharp peaks of Emyn Muil and the edge of Mordor itself, the Dead Marshes.
The feeling you get from the text, it's more than just fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's this pure, overwhelming dread.
Exactly.
It feels like the world itself is corrupted,
Mm.
fundamentally. Not just because Sauron is nearby, but like there's some deep, ancient wound in the land that just never healed.
And that's really the core mission for this deep dive, right? To look at the marshes not just as, a place on the map, but as this crucial psychological space, a spiritual
The
test.
crucible.
Yeah, a crucible. The sources are really clear on this. The world itself feels like it's decaying under Sauron's shadow, and the hobbits, they feel that poisoning pressing down on them. It's physical, but it's also moral. It's testing their will, their souls, maybe even more than their bodies.
And they're being tested with probably the most unreliable guide imaginable. We've gone from the Fellowship, this group of heroes, to this broken little trio.
Right, Frodo and Sam, completely dependent now on Gollum, or Smeagol. And his loyalty, well, it shifts like the mists around them, doesn't it?
Constantly.
The description Tolkien gives us right at the start just sets you up for total misery. He uses this almost physical language: cold, reeking bogs, still oily water, stagnant, and these constant coiling mists. It's a place where you can't even trust the ground under your feet, which, perfectly symbolizes their guide and maybe their hope, too. It's heavy, oppressive, and the silence. Tolkien specifically says the silence feels like a presence, waiting.
Just waiting to pull them down.
Mhm.
I think that deliberate, almost jarring shift in tone, going from the big heroic chapters before this to this slow, suffocating dread, that's pure Tolkien genius at work.
It really is.
He makes you, the reader, feel that instability, that lack of firm footing, right along with Frodo and Sam. And this disorientation, it leads straight into, well, maybe the most chilling single moment in the whole journey through the marshes.
What's fascinating here is how Tolkien builds up to revealing those dead faces. The pace just slows right down to a crawl.
Yeah, it's almost hypnotic.
He focuses on what they're feeling, the sucking mud, the cold, the fact there are no stars, just this unnerving stillness. And it's in that quiet that Sam notices something. Well, something utterly unnatural, these pale, glimmering faces just under the oily water.
And these aren't recent dead, are they? The sources really emphasize these are ancient remnants. From that huge battle, the Last Alliance, men, elves, orcs, all preserved.
A monumental graveyard, perfectly kept in the muck. And Gollum, who knows this place, knows the terror of it intimately, he just reacts instantly, screams that warning, "Don't look at the lights."
Those eerie sort of phosphorescent glows floating over the water.
Yeah, and Gollum, for all his slipperiness, actually gives the key insight. Sources clarify these aren't really ghosts in the traditional sense. They're not active spirits trying to, grab them.
So what are they?
They're described as echoes, remnants, potent symbols of just how futile war ultimately is. They embody the cost, the massive cost, of Middle-earth's old conflicts, just preserved there. Silent, but incredibly persuasive. They remind you that everything, every big effort, eventually just sinks into the mud.
Sam sees them, but it's Frodo who gets completely fixated, almost hypnotized. This feels like a specific vulnerability, doesn't it? Like the ring is exploiting something in him. Why Frodo, specifically?
There's the absolute key distinction in this chapter, I think. Frodo's already carrying the ring, this spiritual sickness. He has this deep, almost mystical empathy anyway, and the ring just twists it, amplifies it horribly.
Right.
He's seen so much death already, felt so much despair, more than any hobbit should have to bear. And the ring kind of tunes him in to the metaphysical horror of the marshes.
Like a radio frequency of despair.
Exactly. Whereas Sam, he sees the physical threat, the danger of the lights making you stumble, the risk of falling in. But he doesn't have that same spiritual vulnerability. He's not tuned to that same frequency.
So the marshes are speaking directly to Frodo's deepest exhaustion, whispering about surrender, that soft, deadly sleep.
Precisely. That fixation on the candles of corpses, it's literal, this weird light that catches your eye, but it's also metaphorical.
Hmm.
The marches offer this insidious, almost peaceful-seeming alternative to just suffering endlessly with the ring.
It's not a threat of violence, it's the temptation of just stopping, oblivion.
Yeah. The environment itself feels designed maybe by Sauron, maybe just organically, through all that trauma designed to break your spirit long before it breaks your body. It's a psychological assault course.
Which means the marshes aren't really a road, are they? They're more like this massive open wound on the world. And that takes us right into the deeper symbolism, the connection to Tolkien's own life.
Yeah, the big one, the primary symbol that so many academic sources point to is the lingering corruption of war. Tolkien fought at the Somme, Passchendaele. He saw things, and he poured those visceral memories into the marshes.
You can feel it.
The land itself literally remembers the battle. The body seeped into the ground, creating these wounds that nature just hasn't healed, couldn't heal, even after thousands of years.
Can we dig into that World War I connection a bit more? People often mention it, but what are the specific things you think Tolkien lifted from his experience?
Well, the parallels in the text are pretty startling when you look closely.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the conditions.
Yeah.
Endless mud, impassable mud, trapping everything. You have to stick to these narrow, treacherous paths, guided by locals you can't really trust. That's the trench system, right?
Absolutely.
Then there are the dead, unburied dead, often half submerged, sticking out of the mire. That was a grim reality of trench warfare. And crucially, those eerie, unreliable lights.
So will-o'-the-wisp.
Exactly, the ignis fatuus, corpse candles. Soldiers reported seeing things like that, lights playing tricks on exhausted eyes in the mist and the dark on the Western Front.
So it's like a mythologized version of that industrialized trauma from the 20th century. And the core theme seems to be, well, that even past glories, the bravery of those men and elves, it all just ends up as rotting corpses in the mud.
It's a profound statement about the futility, the corrosive legacy of conflict. Past heroism becomes fertilizer for present despair. It's incredibly bleak.
And it really underscores the sheer reach of Sauron's shadow, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. They're still pretty far from Mordor's actual gates, geographically speaking, but the environment is already completely corrupted. It shows Sauron's influence isn't just confined to Barad-dûr, his fortress.
It's more like a disease.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you connect this to the bigger picture, the marshes are kind of definitive proof that evil is this spreading contagion, a spiritual blight that poisons the ground, the air, the water. It fundamentally changes the world, bending nature itself towards decay.
And the most powerful effect of that disease is how the world mirrors the soul. The marshes become this landscape of despair that reflects Frodo's own breakdown.
They're locked together, aren't they, in this morbid synchronicity. The closer Frodo gets to Mordor, the more the world around him rots, and the more his own soul seems to rot and fragment alongside it.
Think about where they came from. Hobbits, creatures of simple pleasures, second breakfast.
Right. And now they're wading through the graves of the ancient world, trading pipeweed for the stench of decay. Their innocence isn't just, chipped away at. It's fundamentally gone, replaced by this grim knowledge, this witnessing of the world's deepest wounds.
It's a brutal transformation, but the way the three of them, Frodo, Sam, and Gollum, navigate this despair, that's where we get some incredibly rich character study. The contrasts are fascinating.
Definitely. You see three really distinct responses to just absolute hopelessness, different kinds of endurance or lack thereof. With Frodo, what stands out is this fragmentation, this extreme detachment.
The sources say his physical exhaustion is almost secondary to the spiritual weight he's carrying. He's pulling away from Sam, from the world we recognize. What details in the text show that growing distance?
Tolkien often focuses on his eyes. They become distant, clouded. Sometimes it seems like he's looking through Sam, not at him. He barely speaks, and when he does, it's often to Gollum like they share this strange language of torment.
Yeah.
He's not just tired, he's isolating himself spiritually, building this wall between himself and the sheer pain of the journey. The ring does that, doesn't it? It isolates him by making his suffering feel unique, almost mystical, something only he can bear, or fail to bear.
And that detachment leads to that weird kinship he feels with Gollum. Like he sees Gollum as a possible future version of himself.
Precisely. Frodo's starting to perceive things, hear voices maybe that others can't. That spiritual burden creates this huge, unbridgeable gap with Sam, who can really only see the physical stuff, the exhaustion, the mud, the cold. Frodo's seeing the ghosts of the past. Sam's just seeing misery and the need for dry socks.
Which brings us perfectly to Samwise Gamgee. If Frodo is the suffering soul, Sam is the anchor. Just pure, unshakable loyalty and love in a world losing its light.
Sam is the grounding force, constantly pulling things back to the practical. His way of surviving is just stubbornness, practicality, bluntness sometimes. He stays focused on immediate needs, finding a dry spot, rationing the lembas, trying to cook something, just putting one foot in front of the other. He doesn't fully grasp Frodo's inner torment. He can't see those faces pulling Frodo down in the same way, but his loyalty, it's absolute, never wavers.
In a symbolic way, Sam's love feels like the only real antidote to the poison in the marshes. It's what keeps both of them going, arguably.
It's that spark of resilience, isn't it? Even here, in the deepest muck, Sam's hope doesn't completely die. Because his hope isn't some grand philosophical idea about victory. It's rooted entirely in his commitment to Frodo.
Yeah.
His inner thoughts are often about what Frodo needs right now.
A rest?
Maybe some encouragement, not the huge existential dread. And that simple earthy resilience. You could argue it's stronger than any magic in this particular landscape.
And then guiding them through this nightmare, inside and out, is Gollum. The sources suggest he really steals the focus here. He shifts from just being a threat to being this crucial, almost tragic figure.
His physical presence is so key to the mood. Tolkien describes his movements animalistic and serpentine. He just fits this place, scuttling through the mire.
Like he belongs there.
Exactly. He's like the spirit of the marshes, made flesh cunning, wet, cold, and totally self-interested.
And he perfectly embodies that internal war that's also tearing Frodo apart.
Absolutely. Tolkien gives us these constant glimpses of the battle inside him, the tension between Sméagol, that pitiful, scared, almost loyal side that remembers kindness, and Gollum, the pure hatred, the treachery, the obsession.
It's always there.
That internal war is always raging, and the fact that it's so ambiguous, that's key to why this chapter resonates so deeply. You never quite know which side is winning. It shifts with every glance Frodo gives him, doesn't it?
And that tension forces this really difficult moral question onto us, the readers. Compassion versus condemnation. Frodo leans towards compassion. Sam struggles with just wanting to be rid of him. Why do you think Tolkien left Sméagol's potential redemption so up in the air right here?
Because Gollum's ambiguity makes the tragedy universal. If he were just pure evil, he'd be, just a monster, a plot device.
Right.
By letting Sméagol surface, even fleetingly, Tolkien forces us to confront the limits of pity. Can someone this corrupted be saved? Should you even try?
Yeah.
The hobbits are literally trusting their lives to a creature whose moral compass is as treacherous as the swamp itself. It's incredibly unsettling.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. How does Tolkien pull this off? How does he make this slow, dreary, frankly miserable walk through mud so utterly captivating?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
We're talking days of just slogging through bogs, yet it's riveting. It feels like it has to come down to sheer skill, his craft.
The sources really credit Tolkien's unbelievable control over tone and pacing here. The story doesn't rush. It unfolds slowly, almost hypnotically. It deliberately mirrors that dreary, rhythmic march. And that slowness is precisely what creates the feeling of inescapable dread.
It's a masterclass in showing, not telling. Style over just, action scenes. The genius is the restraint. Normally, you'd expect some big monster fight or a dramatic chase here.
Right.
But nothing really happens in that conventional sense. They don't fight anything physical, yet everything changes internally.
Exactly. The change is all inside. Frodo's burden gets heavier, Gollum's loyalty is stretched paper thin, Sam's hope is pushed to its absolute limit. Tolkien builds this unrelenting dread not with shocks or gore, but with this creeping, inescapable psychological terror. The writing itself is beautiful, poetic, but intentionally oppressive. It mirrors that heavy, silent air.
And we have to talk about his use of contrast. Sources call it a dark symphony. How does he use contrast to keep us hooked?
He juggles the sensory details and the emotional viewpoints so brilliantly. Like, he constantly puts Sam's straightforward, practical, often grumpy comments, focused on basic needs, right up against Frodo's distant, almost mystical perspective, lost in ancient sorrow.
That creates sparks, doesn't it?
It creates this dynamic tension. We shift constantly between the immediate physical reality, the mud, the cold, and the deeper invisible spiritual reality that Frodo's tapped into.
And the sensory details themselves must be key for putting us in the marshes.
Oh, absolutely. Every little thing, the sucking sound of the mud, that bone-chilling cold, the foul smell of decay, the deceptive shimmer of those lights, it's all carefully orchestrated. It immerses you completely in the feeling of decay. It reinforces that central idea. The physical world is relentlessly reflecting the internal spiritual decay, both in the characters and in the world itself. It's total immersion.
So this chapter is way more than just a transition, a way to get from A to B. It feels like a crucial turning point.
It really is the point of no return, psychologically. It marks how far the hobbits have truly fallen from home, from comfort, from everything they knew. It sets the stage for Ithilien and then ultimately Mordor. This chapter shifts the whole focus of the story, doesn't it? It moves beyond just defeat Sauron to this much deeper personal struggle.
Mhm.
How do you survive absolute despair?
It's like the final psychological hurdle, the last moment of doubt before the journey becomes purely about the objective.
And it raises that important question, doesn't it? Can you even have true heroism if you haven't first passed through a place like this, a landscape that strips you bare of everything except your will to keep going?
Yeah.
The marshes force that choice.
Yeah.
Keep enduring, or give in to that soft, deadly sleep the dead seem to offer. Endurance itself becomes the highest form of resistance here.
So if the marshes test their will, they also teach us something fundamental.
I think so. The marshes teach us that the wounds of war, especially those deep, psychic wounds from ancient conflicts, they might be permanent. That our environment really does reflect our inner state. And maybe most importantly, that unwavering loyalty, Sam's pure, stubborn love, is perhaps the only real, non-magical counterweight to that kind of absolute metaphysical despair.
It's such a haunting piece of writing, this slow, terrifying descent into the graveyard of Middle-earth's past. It really forces you to think about what happens to the soul when it's exposed to that much corruption, that much evil for so long. You feel like you're wading through the same psychological mud.
And the cost of getting through it is immense, isn't it? Even if they physically make it across.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, the physical and spiritual descent, that chilling imagery of the faces, the deep symbolism, especially the WWI echoes, the contrast between the characters, and Tolkien's incredible literary skill.
As we sort of wrap up this deep dive, maybe we should pull together those threads, especially this idea of enduring through profound psychological decay.
Right. We saw in the marshes the literal cost of failure from a past age, those ancient warriors just trapped, sinking forever in the mud.
But this whole journey for Frodo, it's become about surviving despair itself. So if Frodo doesn't find the resilience to keep going, if the ring ultimately wins internally, what then? Does the spiritual death of his soul, that internal decay, the detachment we talked about, does that matter more in the end than the physical defeat of Sauron?
Wow, that really shifts the idea of what victory means, doesn't it? If the world reflects the soul like the marshes show us so powerfully, then what does just surviving this place permanently imprint on Frodo and Sam? They get out of the mud, they escape the lights, but do they ever really escape seeing those faces just under the surface?
It's that question of permanent psychological scarring versus just completing the mission, isn't it? They might win the war against Sauron, but the battle for Frodo's soul after the marshes, it feels profoundly uncertain, maybe tragically compromised no matter what happens next.
Success might mean destroying the ring, but maybe true victory, for Frodo at least, would just mean surviving himself, surviving the wounds the world inflicted on him there.
It's a difficult thought, profoundly haunting, really, but it feels like a necessary one if you truly want to grapple with the weight and the importance of the Dead Marshes.
Well, thank you for joining us for this pretty intense descent into dread. We hope it left you with plenty to think about. Me